Well, the intention is to film a garden tour today. We are outside. It is so nice to be outside. Well, we don't often start garden tours in the greenhouse, but it's actually getting pretty windy out. So I think the best thing to do would be for me to take all of the video, hopefully before it starts to snow too hard, because that's starting a little bit as well. And then we'll head inside where I can talk you through everything from in there, which is actually a little bit of a shame because it is gorgeous in here. It's hovering right around the freezing mark outside, but it is almost 17 degrees here. The sun's been poking out a little bit in between flurries, and just for a minute or so here and there. That's all it takes. There it is. And when it is borderline sunny in here, there are a couple of windows that I like to crack open because it can get hot really, really fast. And that is actually perfect for all of these ranunculus and anemones just starting to sprout, as well as some larkspur seeds. That's what I have under those domes to keep the humidity in. Bye, garden. Well, that was a bit of a downer, but I did plan on giving you a tour of my grow room downstairs anyway, because I have a ton of seedlings down there. So, hello, Buster. Always on the white blanket, huh? Now, I don't always do a garden tour in March because frankly, there's not really always a whole lot to look at. There are some things starting to pop up though. Our snow has only been gone for about 2 weeks. The ground just thawed around that same time too. There are always a couple of early bloomers though, and the very first one is always the snowdrops. It's not even spring yet, it's still officially winter. The snowdrops are a really welcome sign, but you'll also see things like weeds that I didn't pull, garden things that didn't get put away, a few half-finished projects, and there is nothing growing to kind of hide those things. Hi, dude. Buster pretty much hibernated all winter right here on this couch. So it is really nice to look at a completely clean slate in early spring because it gives you an idea of the scale and the size of the different gardens. And in terms of production, I do a large cutting garden and a large vegetable garden. And I mean, large is, depending on the size you have, this might not seem very large, but our entire property is 1/3 of an acre. So it's large to me considering that I'm the only one that does the majority of the garden work, and also that I run a piano studio and teach 45 private students 10 months of the year. So if all I had to do was garden, I might be able to handle a larger space, but it isn't. So this works really well for our lifestyle at the moment. So the space under this oak tree is mostly an ornamental shade garden. So there's a lot of hostas. I have a couple of ferns and things like that. But I also have a lot of spring bulbs. So there's a little bit of snowdrop just starting to come up. There's some primula foliage that doesn't really die back, but it looks like there's some new growth here too. And there are quite a few interesting other things that hopefully we'll start to see popping up here in the next few weeks. We have this small patio that we use as a seating area right behind a little sandbox for our kids, and then next to that is what we call the upper garden. Now this was our first original garden that we put in and expanded over little by little over the course of about 3 or 4 years, and it was designed to be a vegetable garden, and that's what we used it for until I started growing more and more flowers and kind of spilled over from the cutting garden. And last year I really didn't grow all that many vegetables, but I'd really like to try to keep this as a mostly productive kitchen garden this year. I've started a lot of seeds already and you're going to see those shortly. This garden consists of 8 permanent rows. I did dig and remove the grass and do a little bit of tilling when we first set it up, but it's basically been run as a no-dig bed since. The rows are about 20 feet long and there's 8 of them, so that's a good amount of space. And the lower garden. There are 3 main components to what I call the lower garden, and this is usually the cutting garden. So this is where I grow the majority of my cut flowers for the farmer's market. We have a few in-ground rows that we did not dig actually. We couldn't. It was basically an inch of grass and topsoil on top of hard-packed gravel. It was impossible to dig, so we did the cardboard, soil, and a little compost on top. It gets better and better every year. And there's a lot of overwintered perennials actually that need to be moved this year. I also have some garlic and some lilies and some feverfew growing in the raised beds in the front. Those originally started actually as my perennial herb beds, but they've been slowly being converted over. Oh, one of them is full of saffron crocus. That's what you see right here. The saffron crocus blooms in the fall and the foliage stays all winter and spring and is going to start to die back. I think usually May to June it dies back. And then you can actually plant something on top as long as you get it out of the way by September or so when the foliage starts to grow back. So the in-ground rows are basically one area. The raised beds are a second. There are a few more raised beds on the other side of the greenhouse, but the greenhouse itself is growing space number 3. And that's been going through a bit of a renovation. It's going to need a coat of paint this year and maybe a little bit more insulation inside just to shore up some gaps that are in there, but it's just gone through its 4th winter. We built it in the fall of 2019, so the greenhouse was in place when we hit our first lockdown in 2020. And then we built the garden around the greenhouse that spring and then added on a little bit each year. Yeah, this was its 5th winter and it's still pretty good. I mean, I built it myself. I had some help putting up the walls and the basic framing, and then I finished a little bit on the walls. I built the door and I built the roof. So I'm pretty proud of that, even though there's a little bit of gaps here and there. And I've learned enough that, you know, if I build another one in the future, I'll be able to do a much better job. But in terms of the design and the materials, I'm super happy with it. I did create a U-shaped bed so that I could have in-ground growing space inside the greenhouse, which was really good. But I was facing the challenge of having to replace all of the soil this year, and when I really thought about it, it's not a huge amount of growing space. Considering how much space I have outside, I decided it would be a better use of space to rip it out, level it inside, and then pave the entire thing, or even just gravel. But I do have a lot of reclaimed paving stones that I could use. And that's because I stuff this thing completely full of transplants, things that I grow from seed in the spring. And with the beds the way they were, I really couldn't put any shelving in here. Hello, you're coming, are you? All right, some removable shelving units that I put in here in the spring and then I can take out later on. And I would really like to put a little table and chair, not like a table you could sit at and eat, but a chair with a small side table, so that I could sit in here on a rainy day or even spring and fall when it's chilly outside and have a little outdoor space for coffee. So moving on outside the greenhouse, the landscaping around the greenhouse is Mediterranean herbs. I've got a couple of different varieties of thyme and oregano. I have chives and I have snowdrops. Now there are 2 different varieties. You can see the difference in the foliage. This one is a little bit further along. These flowers are open already and the foliage is a little bit wider versus this one that hasn't quite bloomed yet. You can see the foliage is a lot thinner. What else do I have around here? There's a sage, there's a winter savory, and in this little colorful bed, the triangle one on the side is full of chocolate mint. Mint is incredibly prolific and it spreads underground, so it's best to keep it contained unless you want it to completely take over your bed. I know most of us don't. It's a little bit too early to be cutting all this back now. All this dead stuff on top does actually offer protection for the cold winds and the hard freezes that we are still at risk of getting. The raised beds on the other side of the greenhouse, these are much longer, and this is usually where I have a lot of my early blooming cut flowers. I had ranunculus here last year. I had a bed completely full of tulips and one of daffodils. Those daffodils have been moved and relocated, but this year all of my tulips are in this furthest bed, this 4th one, and they are just starting to come up. Now these were not here a week ago, so that is a really good sign. And just in front, the 3rd bed is full of overwintered, you can call them hardy annuals, biennials sometimes. There's a lot of different names for these cool flowers. They are things that are hardy enough to overwinter in our climate. Now this netting was mostly meant to keep creatures out before the ground froze. I did not get this net taken off before the snow fell, and you can see that the weight of it has ripped it on the corners, which is not great. So the first 2 beds are empty. I'm not going to plant those too early because the sun is still pretty low in the sky, and the house actually creates shade in the middle of the day over these first 2 beds. Now I do also have some growing space in the front yard, and I'm not sure that I'm going to keep that growing space there permanently. So it is mostly ornamental beds in the front yard, but I do have this random rectangular garden space as well. It does have some perennials. There's quite a bit of lavender there. There are some sea holly that I grew from seed. I think I have a couple of types of veronica. I put in some things in the fall last year, but I grew most of my sunflowers, some statice, a lot of larkspur. I grew a whole bunch of that stuff there. It hasn't all been cleaned out. And there's a similar shading issue too. There are some really big trees that cast a lot of shade in early spring, and that starts to creep over again in the fall. So for sun-loving plants, I can really only grow those well in the middle of the summer for about that 3-month period, June until end of August or so. Can you please keep your claws to yourself, please? So the ornamental beds all need a lot of reworking. Ow, Buster. And they need a lot of cleaning up too. Like I said before, I haven't cleaned up anything in there. So this is exactly what it looked like when the snow melted. But it gives us a jumping off point, a point of reference, so we can have some really good before and after shots once everything starts to grow again in the spring. So I think it's time to go head downstairs and take a look at all of the seedlings. There are so many. I have been busy. Buster, that means you need to move, dude. It is a catastrophe down here. And that's not an exaggeration. This is not a finished area in our basement. It's just an old storage space that we have not redone yet. But it works so well for seed starting space. Little by little, I've been getting my dahlias going, and you see those shoots right there are actually overdue for taking cuttings. They're getting a little bit big, but that's fine. They'll work. I can just trim them down a little bit. Nothing from those yet, but there are some shoots starting in this bin right here. These are, I believe, burgundy. The others are white. Those will be ready for cuttings in about a week. We have some brand new soil blocks made yesterday. This is all of my statice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 varieties of statice. And each of these sections is 20, so that's 160 soil blocks on this tray right here. Hopefully we'll be able to see all right with these lights. Brand new little baby peppers. There are 3 varieties here. This is a mix, I think mini bell pepper mix, sweetie snack mix. King Arthur, the last of some F1 hybrid seeds from last year. Oops, and this one is Yankee Bell. One more tray of peppers right here. Let's see. Oh, these are some new ones that my neighbor bought. Escamillo, Orange Blaze, and something else. Carmen? Yeah. If you're watching, Pam, here are your peppers. There, I have some Rebecca down there, some more Rebecca up here. Focus, please. There we go. Tiny little baby Rebecca's. There are the statice. These 2 trays are also brand new. This is straw flowers, and this one is Bupleurum. Not on heat mats. These things don't need heat mats, but they do need light, so they are here on my shelf. This one is lupins. So these are the seed leaves, or cotyledons, the first ones that come right out of the seed, but here you can see just the start of an actual recognizable lupin leaf right there. Not the best germination. There's only 1 seed per cell in this, but there's still some new ones coming up, right? So that is a brand new one right there. Oh, there's some vegetables. We have some cauliflower. These are all golden beets. And then these are broccolini. All cold, hardy vegetables that could be planted out a few weeks before the last frost date. Chinese forget-me-nots for the cutting garden. Again, just starting to pop up. So it looks like patchy germination, but some of them just haven't quite popped up yet. And then there's the other tray of peppers that we already looked at. So there's 2 shelves. There are 2 more. We have a whole bunch of snapdragons, some stock. These are Sweet William. Terrible germination on here, but I might be missing something. I've never grown Sweet William before, so I need to look that up before I start more seeds. Carnations. What is up here? Oh, more stock. And very patchy germination on that last one, so that must have been old seed. More carnations. Then we have feverfew. Look how cute those are. Tiny little feverfew seedlings. So these will need to be all separated and potted up individually. That needs to happen actually this week. Green onions. Slightly patchy germination on these, also old seed though, so that's fine. And then Now these are all from my seed starting video. If you guys watched that, then you might remember this. I did lettuce on this side and spinach on this side. Well, zero germination on the lettuce, but the spinach is looking beautiful. So those are going to be separated and potted up individually this week also. This is everything that is sprouted so far. And I had a big planting day yesterday. This one is Godetia. So nothing is growing here yet because I just planted these yesterday, but there is Godetia. This is what's on the heat mat. So this is my large 4-foot heat mat here. Fantastic. I think I got it on Amazon. Lemongrass, eggplants. This is the rest of that pack of red lettuce that did not pop up. I just wanted to see if I did something wrong. I covered it with vermiculite, that's what you're seeing here, just in case the seed on top dried out. And this is a different variety of lettuce, and these were pelleted seeds, which is why they're red. I've never seen pelleted lettuce seed before. This was a free seed pack that we got through our garden club, so I normally would not buy pelleted lettuce seed. And then what's in here? Oh, parsley. 3 different varieties of parsley, multiple seeds in each one, because sometimes parsley germination is a little bit funny. And I've just noticed my heat mat is not plugged in. Let me fix that. There, that was dumb of me. This one is not on a heat mat because it doesn't need to be. I didn't label this. What is this? Oh, this is chamomile. Okay. So I did go through yesterday. I spent about 10 minutes online looking up the recommended germination temperature for everything because I had a lot of things to start. And a lot of them had a temperature range, you know, sometimes it said 70 to 80. One of them said 40 to 90. I feel like that was the parsley. It had quite a big range. So some of them will germinate on a heat mat, some of them won't. And a lot of things like lettuce can handle cooler temperatures, so I kept it off the heat mat, but it did say I think 70 to 75, and it runs in the 65, 66 degree range down here in this room, so I did put it on the heat mat. So this is not on the heat mat, it's just sitting here on the table. Those things are on heat, but then I have a small shelving unit. Now this is a little metal shelf with a cover from IKEA, and I keep this outside and in the greenhouse sometimes. It's really, really good. What is this? Oh, some herbs. Okay, those 4, now these are cell packs of 12, so there's 48 peas. Those are peas, and then I have dill, cilantro, calendula. Yeah, 2 sections of calendula, 1 of dill, 1 of cilantro, and I'll plant dill and cilantro probably every 2 weeks. Shortly we'll be able to put that outside actually. Now this is great for holding in the humidity, especially since I ran out of domes. Here we have some annual phlox, that's starry eyes. This is more stalk that likes to germinate in the cooler temperatures too. Now this says bupleurum. Didn't I put bupleurum under lights? Yes, that is bupleurum. Why did I do that? Okay, I must have messed up. Bupleurum does need light to germinate, so I'm going to have to make room under my lights for those. But I just seeded them yesterday, so that's fine. And then this one is what? Oh, there is a tag. Oh, mustard. Yeah, mustard greens. So more early spring greens for the vegetable garden. There we go. So that is a ton of things started, and I have a whole bunch more to start. But before I do that, I need to fix up the greenhouse and get some shelving out here because I don't actually have room in here for more seedlings. I do have another set of grow lights to put up actually, so I'm going to have one more shelf in use. But that's not quite going to be enough when all of these things germinate. So that is the struggle every year. Maybe next year I'll need one more shelving unit, but I think it'll work out for this year as long as we don't get a huge freeze and I end up having to bring in everything that's in the greenhouse. So all of those ranunculus and anemones out in the greenhouse, all of these seedlings in here, and I will hopefully have enough space for all of that outside when planting time comes. So that is it. That is our slightly adapted March garden tour and seedling update for this month. And hopefully I will see you next week out in the greenhouse. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you then.